Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Call in the Night. Marshall Thomas had built his life on discipline and loyalty. At 42, he ran the most successful private security firm in the state, employing former military personnel and ex-cops who shared his rigid code of honor. Betrayal was the one sin Marshall could never forgive, a principle that had shaped his business and personal relationships for over 2 decades. His wife Bethany, 38, had been his college sweetheart. They'd married 16 years ago, building what seemed like the perfect American dream. Their children, Emma, 15, and Jake, 13, were honor students who looked up to their father with genuine admiration. Marshall's security firm, Thomas Protection Services, had grown from a 2-man operation to a company employing over 50 specialists, handling everything from corporate security to witness protection. What made Marshall particularly dangerous was his network. Years of military service and Army intelligence had connected him to people who operated in shadows, individuals who owed him favors and understood the value of absolute loyalty. He'd saved lives, kept secrets, and never asked for anything in return. Until now. The call came at 3:07 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. Marshall's phone buzzed with an unknown number, jolting him from deep sleep. Bethany stirred beside him. Her auburn hair spilled across her pillow, but didn't wake. "Mr. Thomas? This is Dr. Richard Howitt, Memorial General. You need to come to the hospital immediately. There's been an accident." Marshall's blood chilled. "My children." "No, sir, they're fine. This concerns your wife. She's here, and you need to see this for yourself." "What happened to Bethany? Is she hurt?" "Sir, your wife is physically unharmed, but the situation is complicated. Please come immediately." Marshall looked at the sleeping form beside him. Bethany was right there. "Doctor, I think there's been a mistake. My wife is..." The line went dead. Marshall stared at his phone, confusion giving way to a cold, calculating alertness that had served him well in combat zones. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He dressed quickly in dark jeans and a black shirt, his mind already analyzing possibilities. The doctor had specifically asked for him, knew his name, mentioned his wife. Racing through red lights in his black Ram 1500, Marshall's heart pounded not from fear, but from the anticipation that his carefully ordered world was about to shatter. He'd investigated enough cheating spouses for clients to recognize the signs, but he'd been blind to them in his own home. Memorial General's emergency room buzzed with typical late-night chaos. Marshall approached the reception desk, his imposing 6'3" frame and military bearing commanding immediate attention. "I'm Marshall Thomas. Dr. Howe called me." The nurse's expression shifted to something between pity and concern. "He's waiting for you. Room 314. Dr. Howe met him outside the room, a man in his 50s with tired eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Thomas, I need to prepare you for what you're about to see. This is unusual." "Doctor, what the hell is going on?" "My wife is at home sleeping." "Sir, the woman in this room was brought in with a man who suffered severe injuries in a motorcycle accident. She identified herself as Bethany Thomas and listed you as her emergency contact. She also claimed to be the patient's sister, but..." Dr. Howe paused, choosing his words carefully. "The nature of their injuries and the circumstances suggest a very different relationship." Marshall's jaw tightened. "Show me." Dr. Howe led him to a window overlooking room 314. Inside, Marshall saw a woman who looked exactly like his wife, her hair disheveled, wearing clothes he'd never seen before, a tight red dress that Bethany would never wear. She was holding the hand of a man with dark hair, speaking to him in hushed, intimate tones. "The man is Clay O'Neill," Dr. Howe continued. 29 years old, works as a personal trainer at Elite Fitness downtown. They were brought in together after his motorcycle crashed. No witnesses, but the scene suggested they were close. Marshall watched his wife, or someone who looked exactly like her, lean down and kiss the injured man's forehead tenderly. The gesture was intimate, practiced, familiar. "Has she seen me?" Marshall asked, his voice deadly calm. "No. She thinks you're coming, but we haven't told her you're here." Marshall pulled out his phone and called home. After 3 rings, a sleepy voice answered. "Hello, Bethany? Marshall? Honey, what's wrong?" "It's 3 in the morning." He was looking at a woman who appeared to be his wife in the hospital room, while his wife answered the phone at home. "Nothing, sweetheart. Bad dream. Go back to sleep." "Okay. Love you." "Love you too." Marshall hung up, his mind racing. He looked again at the woman in the room, studying her features more carefully. The resemblance was uncanny, but now he noticed subtle differences. A small scar above her left eyebrow that Bethany didn't have, slightly different bone structure around the cheekbones. "Doctor, I need to speak with this woman. But she doesn't know I'm here yet, correct?" "That's right. What should I tell her?" Marshall's lips curved into a cold smile. "Tell her that her husband is on his way, but there's been some confusion with the paperwork. Ask her to wait in the family consultation room while you prepare her husband for the meeting." Dr. Howe looked puzzled but nodded. "What are you planning, Mr. Thomas?" "I'm going to find out who's been playing games with my family." As Dr. Howe went to speak with the woman, Marshall stepped back into the shadows of the hospital corridor. 20 years of intelligence work had taught him that the most dangerous enemies were those who came disguised as friends. Someone was using his wife's identity, but why? And what did this have to do with the real Bethany? His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Room 314. "Midnight tomorrow. Come alone, or your family pays the price." Marshall stared at the message, then deleted it. Someone had orchestrated this entire scenario. The question was whether his wife was a victim or a participant. Either way, Marshall Thomas was about to remind them why crossing him was the last mistake they'd ever make. Chapter 2. The Deception Unravels. Marshall spent the rest of the night conducting surveillance from the hospital parking garage. His training had taught him patience, and watching came as naturally as breathing. At 6 a.m., the woman who resembled his wife finally emerged, supporting Clay O'Neill as he limped toward a beat-up Honda Civic. Following them proved elementary. They drove to a rundown apartment complex on the east side of town, Riverside Gardens, a place Marshall knew well from investigating insurance fraud cases. He watched them enter Unit 2B, noting the practiced way the woman guided Clay inside. Marshall returned home to find his real wife preparing breakfast, humming softly as she scrambled eggs. Emma and Jake sat at the kitchen table, backpacks ready for school. "You're up early," Bethany said, kissing his cheek. She smelled like vanilla and coffee, familiar, comforting scents that made the night's discoveries seem surreal. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd grab some coffee before work." "Dad, can you drive us to school today?" Emma asked. "Mom's car is making the weird noise again." Marshall studied his daughter's face, looking for any signs of deception. At 15, Emma had inherited his analytical mind and Bethany's beauty, but her expression showed only typical teenage boredom. "Of course. Jake, grab your project from upstairs." As his family moved through their morning routine, Marshall felt like he was watching strangers. Every gesture, every word took on new significance. Was this normalcy genuine, or was his wife an accomplished actress? After dropping the kids at school, Marshall drove to his office downtown. Thomas Protection Services occupied the top 2 floors of a renovated warehouse, equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance equipment and staffed by professionals who understood the value of discretion. His assistant, Gloria Frederick, greeted him with her usual efficiency. "Morning, Marshall." Jeremiah Lambert called twice. "Says it's urgent." Jeremiah was Marshall's oldest friend and business partner, a former Navy SEAL who handled the firm's more delicate operations. If Jeremiah said something was urgent, it meant trouble. Marshall found Jeremiah in the secure conference room, studying multiple computer monitors displaying what appeared to be surveillance footage. "We have a problem," Jeremiah said without preamble. "Someone's been watching your family for months." The monitors showed various angles of Marshall's house, his children's schools, Bethany's daily routines. The footage was professional grade, clearly taken by someone with significant resources. "How long have you known?" Marshall asked. "I discovered it yesterday when I was upgrading our security systems. These feeds were buried in encrypted servers overseas. Whoever set this up wanted to remain anonymous, but they got sloppy." Marshall leaned forward, studying the timestamps. "Show me October 15th. Jeremiah pulled up the requested date. 3 days ago. The footage showed Bethany leaving the house at 2 p.m., but instead of going to her usual Tuesday book club, she drove to Elite Fitness downtown. Keep going. The surveillance continued, showing Bethany entering the gym and emerging 2 hours later with Clay O'Neill. They drove separately to the Riverside Gardens apartment complex. "Son of a bitch," Marshall whispered. "It gets worse," Jeremiah said, pulling up more footage. "They've been meeting 3 times a week for the past 6 months. But here's what doesn't make sense. Look at this." The screen showed footage from the previous night, time-stamped at 3:15 a.m. It clearly showed the real Bethany at home, sleeping in their bed, while the hospital incident was occurring across town. "Twins," Jeremiah suggested. "Possible but unlikely. Pull up facial recognition analysis." Jeremiah's fingers flew across the keyboard. The software analyzed dozens of photographs, measuring bone structure, eye spacing, and facial geometry. The results were conclusive. The woman in the hospital was not Bethany Thomas. "Professional body double," Marshall concluded. "Someone hired an actress to impersonate my wife. But why? What's the endgame?" Marshall studied the surveillance footage again, noting patterns in his wife's behavior. She'd been careful to vary her routines, checking for tails, using counter-surveillance techniques that suggested training. "Jeremiah, run a deep background check on Clay O'Neill. Full financial history, criminal records, family connections. Also, I want surveillance on my house, discreet but comprehensive." "You think Bethany's involved?" "I think my wife has been living a double life, and someone's tried to use that against us both." Marshall's secure phone buzzed with another message. "Did you enjoy the show last night? Your wife is more talented than you know. Check your email." The attached video file showed the real Bethany entering a hotel room with Clay O'Neill. The timestamp indicated it was filmed the same night as the hospital incident. The video was clearly meant to confuse him, to make him question reality. But Marshall had spent 20 years in military intelligence. He knew psychological warfare when he saw it. Someone was orchestrating an elaborate deception, using his wife's affair as a weapon against him. The question was who, and why they'd chosen to target the Thomas family. Marshall's phone rang. "Dr. Howe from the hospital." "Mr. Thomas, there's been a development. The woman from last night disappeared from the hospital this morning, and there's no record of any Bethany Thomas being admitted. It's as if the entire incident never happened." "What about Clay O'Neill?" "That's just it. There's no record of him either. But I distinctly remember treating him. My colleagues think I'm losing my mind." Marshall smiled grimly. Someone had gone to considerable trouble to erase all evidence of the previous night's events. Professional-grade psychological warfare designed to make him question his own sanity. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated Marshall Thomas. "Doctor, thank you for calling. And doctor, if anyone asks about this conversation, it never happened." Marshall hung up and turned to Jeremiah. "We're dealing with professionals. Military-grade operation, possibly government-connected. They want me to believe my wife is cheating, but they're using an elaborate deception to hide the Rowe affair. So what's the play?" Marshall's expression turned predatory. "We're going to let them think their plan is working. Meanwhile, we gather evidence, identify all the players, and then we destroy them systematically." "What about Bethany?" Marshall looked at the surveillance footage of his wife embracing Clay O'Neill. "My wife made her choice when she decided to betray our family. She's going to learn that Marshall Thomas doesn't forgive betrayal from anyone." The war had begun, and Marshall intended to win it. Chapter 3. Setting the Trap. Marshall spent the next week playing the role of an unsuspecting husband while conducting covert surveillance on his own family. The evidence mounted with methodical precision. Bethany's affair with Clay O'Neill was real, extensive, and had been going on for 8 months. What made it worse was the discovery that his children knew. Emma had been covering for her mother, creating alibis and lying to her father with practiced ease. Jake, younger and more conflicted, had been sworn to secrecy but showed signs of emotional distress that Marshall now recognized as guilt. Marshall's investigation revealed that Clay O'Neill was more than just a personal trainer. He had connections to organized crime families in Chicago, specializing in blackmail and extortion schemes targeting wealthy businessmen. Bethany hadn't just cheated. She'd chosen a partner who represented everything Marshall despised. The psychological warfare campaign continued. Anonymous messages arrived daily, containing photographs and videos designed to torment him. But Marshall's military training had prepared him for far worse than amateur harassment. On Friday evening, Marshall made his move. "Family meeting," he announced during dinner, his voice carrying an authority that made everyone stop eating. Bethany looked nervous. "Is everything all right, honey?" "That depends on your definition of all right, sweetheart." Marshall activated the large monitor in their dining room, connected wirelessly to his phone. The screen filled with surveillance footage of Bethany and Clay together. Emma dropped her fork. Jake stared at his plate. Bethany's face went white. "Dad, I can explain," Emma began. "You can explain why you've been lying to me for months? Why you've been helping your mother destroy our family?" Bethany stood up shakily. "Marshall, please, let's discuss this privately." "Sit down," Marshall commanded, his voice cutting through her protests. "We're going to discuss this as a family, since you involve our children in your deception." He advanced to the next video, footage of Bethany passing an envelope to Clay, clearly containing money. "You've been stealing from our joint accounts to pay your boyfriend. Did you tell him about the safe in my office? About the security protocols for my business?" "I would never, never," Marshall roared, causing everyone to flinch. "You would never betray your husband and children? You would never endanger everything I've built? You would never compromise my business and put my employees at risk?" The next video showed Clay photographing documents in Marshall's home office, documents that contained sensitive information about high-profile clients. "Industrial espionage," Marshall said coldly. "Your boyfriend has been using you to access classified information. My clients' lives could be in danger because of your selfishness." Emma was crying now, the weight of her complicity crushing her teenage composure. Jake looked confused and terrified. "Here's what's going to happen," Marshall continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Bethany, you have exactly 10 minutes to pack a bag and leave this house. Emma, since you chose to participate in this betrayal, you'll be spending the remainder of your junior year at military boarding school in Virginia." "Dad, no," Emma pleaded. "I was trying to protect the family. By lying to me? By helping your mother steal from me? You protected nothing. You helped destroy everything." Marshall turned to Jake, his expression softening slightly. "Son, I know they pressured you to keep their secret, but in this family, loyalty matters more than anything else. You understand that, don't you?" Jake nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Good. You'll stay with me. We'll rebuild what they tried to destroy." Bethany found her voice. "Marshall, please, we can work through this. I made mistakes, but..." "Mistakes?" Marshall laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This is betrayal of the highest order. You brought a criminal into my home. You put our children at risk. You compromised my business and my client's safety." He activated another display, showing financial records. "You've stolen $47,000 from our accounts. You've passed security codes to a man with connections to organized crime. You've turned our daughter into an accomplice and traumatized our son." Marshall stepped closer to his wife, his presence intimidating and absolute. "You chose your side when you decided to betray this family. Now you'll live with the consequences. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. But I'll give you some free advice. Distance yourself from Clay O'Neill as quickly as possible. The people he works for don't value loyalty, and they definitely don't protect failed assets." As Bethany gathered her belongings, Marshall felt no satisfaction, only cold determination. This was just the first move in a longer game. The psychological warfare campaign against him suggested larger forces at work, and he intended to identify and neutralize every threat. Emma begged for forgiveness, but Marshall's expression remained implacable. "Actions have consequences, Emma. You chose to betray your father for someone who is using you. That choice has consequences. Will I ever be able to come home? That depends on whether you can learn to value loyalty over deception. The military school will teach you discipline and honor, qualities you've forgotten." After Bethany left, Marshall sat with Jake in the living room, the house eerily quiet. Dad, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Son, they put you in an impossible position. But you need to understand something important. In this world, there are people you can trust completely, and everyone else. Your mother and sister chose to become everyone else. Jake looked confused. Will Mom and Emma be okay? Marshall's expression hardened. Your mother made her choice when she decided our family wasn't worth protecting. Emma made her choice when she decided loyalty to me was less important than protecting her mother's secrets. But they're still family. No, son. Family doesn't betray family. What they became was something else entirely. Marshall put his arm around his son's shoulders. It's going to be just you and me for a while. We're going to rebuild this family the right way, based on loyalty, honor, and trust. But even as he comforted Jake, Marshall's mind was already planning the next phase of his campaign. Bethany and Clay had no idea what they'd unleashed. The psychological warfare, the surveillance, the elaborate deceptions. Someone had been orchestrating events for months, using his wife's affair as a weapon. Marshall Thomas had spent 20 years learning how to destroy enemies who threatened everything he valued. Now it was time to put those skills to use. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Chapter 4, Gathering Intelligence. 2 weeks after Bethany left, Marshall had transformed their home into a fortress of solitude and calculation. Jake attended school and returned each day to a father who was meticulously planning the destruction of everyone who had betrayed their family. The psychological warfare campaign had escalated. Anonymous messages now arrived hourly, containing increasingly disturbing content. Photos of Jake at school, surveillance footage of Marshall's employees, threats disguised as friendly warnings. Someone wanted Marshall to know he was being watched, wanted him to feel helpless and paranoid. They'd chosen the wrong target. Marshall's investigation had revealed the scope of the conspiracy against him. Clay O'Neill wasn't just a personal trainer with mob connections. He was a professional infiltrator who specialized in targeting successful businessmen through their wives. Bethany was his fourth victim in 2 years. But this operation was different. The psychological warfare, the elaborate hospital deception, the professional surveillance. Someone with significant resources wanted Marshall Thomas specifically destroyed. The answer came from an unexpected source, his daughter Emma. She called from military school on a Tuesday evening, her voice strained and frightened. Dad, I need to tell you something. About Mom and Clay. About why this all started. Go ahead. There's a man named Art Reeves. He hired Clay to target our family specifically. He paid Mom $50,000 to seduce Clay and then bring him into our house. Marshall's blood turned to ice. Art Reeves had been his commanding officer in Army intelligence 15 years ago, and the man Marshall had court-martialed for selling weapons to insurgents in Afghanistan. Emma, where are you calling from? A secure phone in the commandant's office. Dad, Mr. Reeves visited Mom 3 times before she started the affair. He showed her pictures of you killing people overseas. He told her you were a monster who deserved to be destroyed. And your mother believed him? She was scared. He said if she didn't cooperate, he'd hurt Jake and me. Marshall closed his eyes, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Emma, did you know about Reeves when you helped your mother? Not first. I thought Mom was just having an affair. But then I overheard her talking to Clay about the plan to steal your client files. That's when I realized it was bigger. Why didn't you tell me then? Because Mr. Reeves told Mom that if the plan failed, he'd have you killed and make it look like an accident. I thought if I helped Mom, maybe she could protect you somehow. Marshall felt his rage crystallize into something cold and precise. His daughter hadn't betrayed him. She'd been trying to save him from a threat she couldn't understand. Emma, listen to me very carefully. Don't trust anyone at that school except the commandant. Stay in groups, never go anywhere alone. I'm going to bring you home. Dad, I'm so sorry. You were protecting your family the only way you knew how. That takes courage. But now it's my turn to protect what's left of us. After ending the call, Marshall sat in his office, staring at surveillance photos of Art Reeves. His former commanding officer had spent the last decade building a private military contracting company that specialized in wet work for foreign governments. The weapons dealing charge had been dismissed on a technicality, But Marshall's testimony had destroyed Reeves' military career. Now Reeves wanted revenge, and he'd chosen the cruelest possible method, destroying Marshall's family from within. Marshall's secure phone rang. Jeremiah Lambert's voice was urgent. "We have movement." Reeves just arrived in town with a team of 6 operators. They're setting up in the old textile warehouse on Industrial Boulevard. What's their objective? Unknown, but they're armed for a full assault. Marshall, they're planning something big. Good. Let them come. What's the play? Marshall smiled, feeling the familiar calm that came before combat. We're going to give them exactly what they want, a war. But they're going to discover that some enemies should never be awakened. Marshall spent the night preparing. He contacted 5 of his most trusted employees, former Special Forces operators who'd followed him into the private sector. Each man owed Marshall their life at least once over, and none of them would hesitate to follow him into hell. But first, he had to neutralize the immediate threats to his family. Clay O'Neill lived in a converted warehouse apartment downtown, believing himself protected by his mob connections. Marshall arrived at 3 a.m., using skills learned in 2 decades of covert operations to bypass security systems and enter undetected. Clay was asleep, alone. Marshall woke him by pressing a knife to his throat. "Hello, Clay. We need to have a conversation about my wife." Clay's eyes went wide with terror. "Marshall, man, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You're going to explain everything. Who hired you, what they paid you, what information you passed along, and where my wife is now." "Art Reeves hired me. He paid me $100,000 to seduce Bethany and get access to your business files. He's got her stashed in a safe house on the south side. What was the endgame? He wanted to destroy your reputation, steal your clients, and then have you killed. The affair was just the first phase." Marshall pressed the knife deeper. "And you were willing to destroy an innocent family for money." "Man, it's just business." "No, Clay, it's war, and you chose the wrong side." What happened next was swift and professional. Clay O'Neill would never threaten another family. Marshall's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We have your wife. Pier 47, midnight tomorrow. Come alone, or she dies." Marshall deleted the message without reading it twice. Bethany had made her choice when she accepted Reeves' money and brought a predator into their home. He felt no obligation to save her from the consequences of her betrayal. But Reeves had made one crucial mistake. He'd threatened Marshall's children. That was unforgivable. Marshall called Jeremiah. "Bring the team. It's time to end this." Chapter 5. The War Begins. Marshall's team assembled in an abandoned gas station outside town at 10 p.m. 6 men who'd served with him in the world's most dangerous places, bound by loyalty forged in combat and sharpened by years of private operations. "Gentlemen, we're dealing with a professional military contractor named Art Reeves," Marshall began, spreading tactical maps across a makeshift table. "He's been orchestrating a psychological warfare campaign against my family for the past year. Tonight, we end it." Jeremiah Lambert studied the warehouse schematics. 6 hostiles, military-trained, armed with assault weapons. "They're expecting you to walk into their trap at the pier. They're going to get exactly what they want," Marshall replied, "but not the way they planned." Rich Roberts, their demolitions expert, pointed to the warehouse's structural weak points. "We can bring the whole building down if necessary." "No, I want Reeves alive. He's going to answer for what he did to my family." Scott Adkins, their sniper, had been conducting surveillance for the past 6 hours. "They've got your wife in the warehouse basement. She appears unharmed but restrained." Marshall felt nothing at the mention of Bethany's predicament. "She's not my wife anymore. She's Reeves' accomplice who got in over her head." "What's the extraction protocol?" asked Mitch Luna, their medic. "There is no extraction. Bethany chose her side when she took Reeves' money. Our objective is neutralizing the threat to my son and daughter." The team exchanged glances but said nothing. They'd learned long ago not to question Marshall's judgment when it came to loyalty and betrayal. At 11:30 p.m., Marshall walked onto Pier 47 alone, knowing his team was in position around the warehouse. He carried a briefcase containing $50,000 in cash, bait to make Reeves believe the psychological warfare had succeeded. Art Reeves emerged from the shadows with two armed men flanking him. At 55, he still carried himself like a soldier, but 15 years of private contracting had added a layer of ruthless pragmatism that military service alone couldn't provide. Marshall Thomas, still playing hero after all these years. Reeves, still hiding behind other people's wives. Your wife came to me willingly. Turns out she was tired of being married to a killer. Marshall set the briefcase down slowly. You want to know the difference between us, Art? I killed enemies of my country. You killed fellow soldiers for profit. Ancient history. Tonight's about the future, your future specifically. You're going to transfer ownership of Thomas Protection Services to me, and then you're going to disappear. And if I refuse? Reeves smiled coldly. Your wife dies. Your daughter has an unfortunate accident at military school. Your son, well, teenage boys are so prone to self-destructive behavior. Marshall's expression never changed, but Reeves noticed his hands slowly clenching into fists. Here's my counteroffer, Marshall said quietly. You release whatever claim you think you have on my family, leave town tonight, and never come back. In exchange, I let you live. Reeves laughed. You're in no position to make demands. I have 6 men surrounding this pier. Had 6 men? Marshall corrected. Past tense. Reeves' radio crackled with static, then Jeremiah Lambert's voice. Package secured. All hostiles neutralized. Impossible, Reeves whispered. You made the same mistake in Afghanistan. You underestimated the loyalty of better men. Reeves reached for his sidearm, but Marshall was faster. 20 years of combat experience compressed into a single moment of perfect violence. Reeves collapsed onto the pier, clutching a shattered wrist. You destroyed my family, Marshall said, standing over his former commanding officer. You turned my wife against me, traumatized my children, and threatened everything I've built. Marshall, wait. You want to know what kind of monster I really am? You're about to find out. What followed was methodical and brutal. Marshall extracted every detail of the conspiracy, the psychological warfare campaign, the financial backing, the long-term plan to destroy Thomas Protection Services and eliminate Marshall permanently. When he was finished, Art Reeves was no longer capable of threatening anyone. Marshall's phone rang. Jake calling from home. Dad? I heard sirens. Are you okay? I'm fine, son. How are you doing? Good. I did my homework and made myself dinner. When are you coming home? Soon. Jake, we're going to bring Emma home tomorrow. This is over. What about Mom? Marshall looked toward the warehouse where his team was finishing their cleanup operation. Bethany was alive, but would never again be part of their family. Your mother made her choices. Now she'll live with them. Is she going to be okay? That's not our concern anymore, son. Our family is you, me, and Emma. Everyone else chose to be something different. Marshall ended the call and walked toward the warehouse. His team had completed their mission with typical efficiency. No evidence would remain of the night's activities. Inside the basement, Bethany sat zip-tied to a chair, her face stained with tears and terror. When she saw Marshall, hope flickered in her eyes. Marshall, thank God. Please, get me out of here. I can explain everything. No need to explain. I know about Reeves, the money, the plan to destroy our family. He threatened the children. I was trying to protect them. By stealing from me? By bringing a criminal into our home? By turning Emma into an accomplice? Bethany's expression crumbled. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. Marshall cut her restraints with a tactical knife. You could have trusted me. You could have told me the truth. Instead, you chose betrayal. What happens now? Now you disappear. Take whatever money you have left and start over somewhere far from here. If you ever contact Jake or Emma again, if you ever come back to this city, I'll finish what Reeves started. Marshall, please. You're not my wife anymore. You're not their mother anymore. You're just someone who used to live in our house. Marshall walked away, leaving Bethany alone in the warehouse basement. His team was already gone, vanished into the night like ghosts. Outside, Jeremiah waited by their vehicle. Clean operation. No complications. Good. Let's go home. What about her? Marshall didn't look back toward the warehouse. She's not our problem anymore. Chapter 6. Cleaning House. The next morning, Marshall drove to Virginia to collect Emma from military school. She waited in the commandant's office, her face a mixture of hope and terror, unsure whether her father was coming to forgive her or to deliver worse news. "Pack your things," Marshall said simply. "You're coming home." "Dad, I'm so sorry. We'll discuss it in the car." During the 4-hour drive home, Marshall explained everything. Art Reeves' conspiracy, Clay's role as a professional infiltrator, Bethany's choice to accept money in exchange for betraying their family. "Mom really took money to destroy us?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. $50,000, plus whatever Reeves promised her afterward. "And Clay was never really in love with her?" Clay O'Neill was a professional criminal who specialized in seducing wealthy men's wives for blackmail purposes. "Your mother was his job." Emma stared out the window, processing the magnitude of her mother's betrayal. "What happens to her now?" "She disappears. If she's smart, she'll take what money she has left and start over somewhere far away." "Will we ever see her again?" Marshall's expression hardened. "That would be unfortunate for everyone involved." Emma was quiet for several miles before asking, "Dad, do you forgive me? You were protecting your family the only way you knew how. That shows courage and loyalty, even if your methods were misguided. But I lied to you for months, under duress, believing you were saving my life. That's different from betraying someone for personal gain." "How is it different?" "Because loyalty matters more than truth. You remained loyal to your family, even when you thought I was a monster. Your mother chose money over loyalty. Those are incompatible moral positions." Emma nodded slowly, beginning to understand her father's worldview. "What about Jake? Does he know everything?" "Jake knows his mother chose to betray us. That's enough for now." They arrive home to find Jake working on homework at the kitchen table, seemingly normal despite the chaos that had surrounded his life for weeks. "Emma." Jake jumped up and hugged his sister. "Dad said you were coming home." "Yeah, I'm back. Is everything okay now?" Marshall looked at his children, damaged but not broken, confused but still capable of trust. "Everything's fine, son. Our family is complete again." Over the following weeks, Marshall methodically erased every trace of Bethany's existence from their lives. Photos were removed from walls, her belongings donated to charity, legal documents updated to reflect her abandonment of the family. More importantly, he began rebuilding his children's understanding of loyalty, trust, and family obligations. "In this world," he explained one evening over dinner, "there are people who will stand with you no matter what, and people who will betray you for their own benefit. The key to survival is learning to distinguish between the two." "How do you tell the difference?" Emma asked. "You test them. You watch how they behave when they think no one is looking. You see what they choose when loyalty conflicts with personal gain. What if you're wrong about someone? Then you adjust accordingly. But you never give a betrayer a second chance to hurt you." Jake looked confused. "What if they're family?" "Jake, family isn't determined by blood or marriage certificates. Family is determined by loyalty and trust. Your mother ceased to be family when she chose money over protecting us. But she said she was trying to protect us from Mr. Reeves. She was protecting herself from the consequences of taking his money. If she truly wanted to protect us, she would have come to me immediately." Marshall's phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was female, frightened, familiar. "Marshall, it's me. Please don't hang up." "Bethany, you have 30 seconds. I'm in Portland. I used the money Reeves paid me to disappear like you said. But Marshall, he's not the only one. There are others who want to destroy you. That's not my problem anymore. It will be Jake and Emma's problem when these people come for them." Marshall's grip tightened on the phone. "Explain." Reeves was working for a group called the Macedon Collective. They're private military contractors who specialize in eliminating competitors. Your company has been too successful. You're cutting into their profits. "How many others?" "I don't know. Reeves said you'd made enemies throughout your military career, people who wanted revenge. And you're telling me this why?" "Because whatever I did, I never wanted Jake and Emma to get hurt." Marshall considered this. Bethany's information could be valuable, but trusting her again would be monumentally stupid. "If this information proves accurate, I'll consider your debt partially paid. If you're lying, Or if this is another deception, I'll hunt you down personally. Marshall, I know you'll never forgive me. I know I can never come home. But please protect our children. They're my children now. You gave up that right when you took Reeves' money. Marshall hung up and immediately called Jeremiah Lambert. We may have more targets incoming. I need complete background checks on every client we've lost in the past 2 years, cross-referenced with private military contractors and foreign intelligence services. How deep does this go? Deep enough that Reeves thought he could destroy my family and steal my business. Which means there's more money involved than we originally calculated. What's the play? Marshall looked at Jake and Emma, who were watching television in the living room, trying to rebuild some sense of normalcy in their disrupted lives. We're going hunting. Chapter 7, The Macedon Collective. Marshall's investigation into the Macedon Collective revealed a conspiracy far more extensive than Art Reeves' personal vendetta. The organization was a shadow network of former military officers, intelligence operatives, and private contractors who eliminated competition through systematic destruction of rival companies. Thomas Protection Services had become their primary target because Marshall's ethical standards and military connections made him impossible to corrupt or intimidate through conventional means. So they'd chosen psychological warfare, believing that destroying his family would break his will to fight. They'd been catastrophically wrong. Jeremiah Lambert's research identified 12 active Macedon operatives currently in the continental United States, with at least 6 specifically assigned to the Thomas Elimination Project. They operated through shell companies, offshore accounts, and government connections that made them nearly untouchable through legal channels. Nearly. They made one crucial mistake. Marshall explained to his team during a late-night briefing in his secure office. They assumed I'd play by their rules. Rich Roberts studied surveillance photos of known Macedon operatives. These aren't street criminals. They're professionals with government training and unlimited resources. Which makes them predictable, Marshall replied. Professional soldiers follow protocols, procedures, established patterns. That's also their weakness. Scott Atkins pointed to satellite imagery of a compound outside the city. Macedon's operational base is here, former military installation, now privately owned. 12 men, advanced security systems, probably weapons caches. We're not assaulting their base, Marshall said. We're going to make them come to us. Ow! Marshall activated a large monitor displaying financial records, corporate documents, and intelligence reports. Macedon Collective exists because powerful people pay them to eliminate threats. But their clients expect results, and they've invested significant resources in destroying me. So we're going to make them look incompetent. We're going to expose their operations, eliminate their leadership, and demonstrate that hiring Macedon Collective is a guaranteed path to failure. The first target was Ignacio Turner, Macedon's financial coordinator. Turner managed the offshore accounts that funded their operations, believing himself protected by layers of shell companies and international banking laws. Marshall's approach was direct. He kidnapped Turner from a downtown restaurant, extracted complete financial records through enhanced interrogation, and then transferred Macedon's operational funds to accounts controlled by Thomas Protection Services. The second target was Preston Gonzalez, their intelligence coordinator. Marshall's team intercepted Gonzalez during a scheduled meeting with foreign contacts, captured encrypted communications revealing Macedon's client list, and then eliminated Gonzalez permanently. By the third operation, Macedon leadership realized they were under systematic attack. Marshall's secure phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown international number. Mr. Thomas, my name is Michael Dixon. I represent the Macedon Collective's board of directors. Then you represent dead men. I think you misunderstand our position. We're prepared to offer you a substantial compensation package to resolve this conflict peacefully. I'm not interested in money. Then what do you want? Complete dissolution of your organization. Permanent cessation of all operations against Thomas Protection Services. Public acknowledgement that your people were responsible for the psychological warfare campaign against my family. Dixon laughed. That's impossible. We have contracts, obligations. You have 24 hours to comply with my demands. After that, I start killing your board members one by one until someone with authority decides to cooperate. Mr. Thomas, you're threatening very powerful people. This will not end well for you. Mr. Dixon, I've spent 20 years killing very powerful people. The only difference is that now it's personal. Marshall hung up and turned to his team. They'll reject the ultimatum and try to escalate. Probably an assault on our compound tonight. Let them come, Jeremiah said grimly. No, we're not going to sit here and wait to be attacked. We're going to their base, and we're going to end this permanently. Emma entered the office carrying coffee for the team, her presence jarring in the midst of tactical planning. Dad, you need to eat something. You've been in here for 12 hours. Marshall looked at his daughter, 15 years old, try to maintain normalcy while her father planned a military assault against professional killers. Emma, I need you and Jake to go stay with your Aunt Gloria in Michigan for a few days. Why? Because some very dangerous people are angry with me, and I don't want you here when they come looking for revenge. What about you? I'll be fine. This is what I do. Emma studied her father's face, seeing the cold calculation that transformed him from loving parent to lethal operator. Are you going to kill them? Yes. All of them. As many as necessary to protect our family. Emma nodded slowly. Good. They heard us first. Marshall felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. His daughter understood the necessity of absolute victory, but he worried about the cost of that understanding on her developing moral framework. Emma, what these people did to our family was evil. But killing them isn't about revenge. It's about preventing them from hurting other families. I understand, Dad. Good. Take Jake and drive to Michigan tonight. Stay there until I call you. After his children left, Marshall's team finalized their assault plan. The Macedon compound was heavily fortified, but Marshall had spent 20 years breaching similar installations in hostile territory. Remember, he told his men as they loaded equipment, our objective is complete elimination of the Macedon threat. No survivors, no evidence, no witnesses. What about their international connections? Jeremiah asked. After tonight, anyone considering revenge against Thomas Protection Services will remember what happened to the last people who tried. As they drove toward the compound, Marshall reflected on the path that had brought him to this moment. 6 months ago, he'd been a successful businessman with a loving family. Now he was leading a military assault against former allies turned enemies. But he felt no regret. Bethany's betrayal had revealed the weakness in his previous worldview. He believed that loyalty and trust were universally valued principles. Now he understood that some people viewed loyalty as weakness to be exploited. Never again. The Macedon Collective had chosen to destroy his family. Tonight, they would learn the cost of that choice. Chapter 8. No Mercy. The Macedon compound sat on 40 acres of wooded land, surrounded by electronic surveillance systems and patrolled by armed guards. Intelligence reports indicated 12 hostiles inside, including 3 board members who'd flown in from overseas to coordinate the final assault on Thomas Protection Services. Marshall's team approached from the east at 2 a.m., using night vision equipment and military-grade suppressed weapons. They moved with the precision of men who'd conducted similar operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other classified locations around the world. The perimeter guards never knew what hit them. Scott Adkins eliminated 2 sentries with headshots from 400 meters, while Rich Roberts disabled the electronic surveillance systems. Jeremiah Lambert and Mitch Luna breached the compound's main building, while Marshall approached the communications center. Inside, Marshall found exactly what he'd expected, a military-style command post equipped with satellite communications, encrypted computers, and detailed files on Thomas Protection Services. Photos of Jake and Emma were pinned to a tactical planning board alongside building schematics of their school and home. The sight of his children's faces on an enemy target board filled Marshall with cold fury. Michael Dixon was in the communications room, frantically trying to coordinate with overseas handlers when Marshall entered silently behind him. Hang up the phone. Dixon spun around, reaching for a sidearm that Marshall had already confiscated. Mr. Thomas, you're making a grave mistake. We have government connections, international backing. You had government connections. Past tense. Marshall forced Dixon to his knees and zip-tied his hands behind his back. "You're going to tell me about every client contract, every ongoing operation, every person who authorized the attack on my family." "I can't do that. You don't understand the forces you're dealing with." Marshall pressed his knife against Dixon's throat. "I understand perfectly. You're private military contractors who specialize in destroying families. Tonight, you learn what happens when you target the wrong family." The interrogation lasted 30 minutes. By the end, Marshall had extracted complete details about Macedon's organizational structure, financial backing, and client relationships. More importantly, he learned that the attack on his family had been authorized by a consortium of defense contractors who viewed Thomas Protection Services as a threat to their monopoly on government security contracts. "How many other families have you destroyed?" Marshall asked. "I don't know exact numbers. Estimate. Maybe 50 families over the past 5 years." Marshall felt his rage crystallize into something pure and absolute. 50 families destroyed by these animals, 50 sets of children traumatized and parents murdered, all for corporate profit. Any regrets? It's just business. Marshall's knife moved with surgical precision. Michael Dixon would never harm another family. Throughout the compound, Marshall's team systematically eliminated the remaining Macedon operatives. These weren't arrests or capture operations. This was extermination of a cancer that had metastasized throughout the private military industry. In the compound's basement, they discovered files on dozens of target families, including detailed psychological profiles and operational plans. Marshall recognized several names. Successful businessmen who died in accidents over the past 2 years, their companies subsequently acquired by Macedon clients. "Jesus Christ," Jeremiah whispered, scanning through the files. "They've been doing this for years." "Not anymore," Marshall replied grimly. Rich Roberts planted thermite charges throughout the compound, while Mitch Luna secured hard drives and documents for analysis. Scott Adkins maintained overwatch, ensuring no Macedon operatives escaped the kill zone. As they prepared to leave, Marshall's secure phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he recognized, Stan Mason, a former Delta Force operator who'd served with him in Afghanistan. "Marshall, it's Stan. You need to get out of there now." "What's wrong?" "FBI tactical teams are en route to your location. Someone tipped them off about your operation." Marshall felt ice in his veins. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 10 minutes. They think you're conducting a terrorist attack." "Who made the call?" "Unknown. But Marshall, they have arrest warrants for you and your entire team. Someone fed them intelligence about your activities tonight." Marshall realized the trap immediately. Macedon had anticipated his assault and arranged for federal intervention, knowing that arrest would be more devastating than death. His children would be left defenseless while he rotted in federal prison. "Stan, I need a favor." "Name it." "Take care of Jake and Emma if something happens to me." "Nothing's going to happen. Get out of there and we'll figure this out." Marshall ended the call and turned to his team. "FBI inbound. They think we're terrorists." "How is that possible?" Jeremiah asked. "Macedon fed them intelligence designed to frame us. Probably told them we were planning an attack on federal facilities." The sound of helicopters grew louder in the distance. "We could run," Rich Roberts suggested. "Disappear overseas until this blows over." "No, running makes us look guilty, and it leaves my children vulnerable." Marshall made a decision that would define the rest of his life. "Jeremiah, take the team and extract. Use the emergency protocols and get to the safe house in Canada." "What about you?" "I'm staying. Someone needs to be here when the FBI arrives to explain what Macedon Collective really was." "Marshall, they'll arrest you. Better arrested than hunted. This way, my children stay safe while we fight this through legal channels." "The evidence will exonerate us," Mitch Luna said. "These files prove Macedon was a criminal organization." Marshall nodded toward the approaching helicopters. "Get out of here, all of you." "That's an order." His team disappeared into the woods with military efficiency, leaving Marshall alone in the burning compound. He placed his weapons on the ground and waited for federal agents to arrive. When FBI tactical teams surrounded the compound 15 minutes later, they found Marshall Thomas sitting calmly beside a pile of documents that detailed Macedon Collective's criminal activities over the past 5 years. "I want to speak with your commander," Marshall told the first agent who approached him. "I have information about a criminal conspiracy that's been murdering American families for corporate profit." The agent looked skeptical but followed protocol. "Sir, you're under arrest for multiple counts of murder and domestic terrorism." "Understand. But before you process me, you need to read these files. 50 American families have been destroyed by the organization you just helped me eliminate." As federal agents secured the scene, Marshall felt a strange sense of peace. He'd eliminated the threat to his children, exposed a criminal conspiracy, and demonstrated that some enemies should never be awakened. Now came the legal battle to prove that justice and law weren't always the same thing. Chapter 9. Absolute Victory. The federal case against Marshall Thomas collapsed within 6 weeks. FBI analysis of the Macedon Collective files revealed a criminal enterprise that had operated with impunity for over 5 years, systematically destroying families and eliminating business competitors for wealthy clients. The evidence was overwhelming. Detailed operational plans, financial records, surveillance footage, and recorded communications between Macedon operatives and their targets. More damning was the discovery of government corruption within federal agencies. 3 FBI supervisors and 2 Pentagon officials had been taking payments from Macedon clients in exchange for classified information and operational interference. Marshall's attorney, a former military prosecutor named Chuck Benjamin, presented the case as justifiable defense of family and country against a domestic terrorist organization. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Benjamin argued, "my client did what law enforcement couldn't or wouldn't do. He eliminated a criminal conspiracy that had murdered dozens of American citizens." The prosecution's case disintegrated when Bethany Thomas was called as a witness. Taking the stand in federal court, she testified about Art Reeves' recruitment approach, the $50,000 she'd received to betray her family, and the psychological manipulation Macedon had used to turn her against her husband. "I thought I was protecting my children," Bethany said, her voice barely audible. "Mr. Reeves showed me classified footage of Marshall killing people overseas and told me he was a dangerous psychopath who deserved to be destroyed. And you believed him? I was terrified. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd have my children killed. Why didn't you tell your husband about the threats?" Bethany looked directly at Marshall for the first time since taking the stand. "Because I'd already taken the money. I thought if I helped them destroy Marshall, maybe they'd leave Jake and Emma alone." "Do you regret your decision?" "Every day. I lost my family. My children won't speak to me, and my husband will never forgive me." "Do you believe Marshall Thomas is a dangerous psychopath?" Bethany shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, he's a good man who protected his family when I failed to protect mine." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a verdict of not guilty on all charges. Federal prosecutors immediately announced they would not pursue an appeal, citing overwhelming evidence of justifiable defense against a clear and present danger to American families. Outside the courthouse, Marshall reunited with Jake and Emma, who'd spent 2 months in protective custody while the legal proceedings unfolded. "Dad, are we going home now?" Jake asked. "Yes, son, we're going home." Emma looked older than her 15 years, hardened by months of uncertainty and media attention. "What happens to Mom?" Marshall glanced toward the courthouse steps where Bethany stood alone, ignored by reporters and abandoned by the few supporters who'd attended the trial. "That's not our concern anymore. She testified for you. Doesn't that count for something? She testified truthfully because lying would have been perjury. But the damage she caused to our family can't be undone by courtroom testimony." Emma nodded slowly, understanding her father's position even if she didn't entirely agree with it. As they walked toward Marshall's truck, a reporter approached with a microphone and cameraman. "Mr. Thomas, what's your message to other families who might face similar threats?" Marshall stopped and looked directly into the camera. "If someone threatens your family, you eliminate that threat permanently. Law enforcement can't protect you from enemies who have government connections and unlimited resources. Sometimes, justice requires taking matters into your own hands. Are you advocating vigilante justice? I'm advocating absolute loyalty to family above all other considerations. In this world, there are people who will stand with you no matter what, and people who will betray you for their own benefit. The key to survival is learning to distinguish between the two. 3 months later, Thomas Protection Services had expanded to include offices in 12 states, with a client list that included Fortune 500 companies and federal agencies. Marshall's reputation as someone who would go to any lengths to protect his clients made him the most sought-after security contractor in the country. Jake had returned to his normal routine, though he developed a harder edge that suggested his father's lessons about loyalty and betrayal had taken root. Emma excelled in her senior year of high school, planning to study criminal justice and eventually join the family business. Bethany had disappeared entirely. Rumors suggested she'd moved to Europe, but Marshall made no effort to verify her whereabouts or condition. On a quiet Sunday evening, Marshall sat in his home office reviewing intelligence reports about potential threats to his clients. Jake was upstairs playing video games, Emma was studying for college entrance exams, and the house felt peaceful in a way it hadn't for over a year. His secure phone rang. Jeremiah Lambert, calling from the Canadian safe house, where Marshall's team had been hiding during the federal investigation. "We're coming home," Jeremiah announced. Federal prosecutors dropped all charges against the team this morning. "Good. I have new contracts waiting." "Marshall, we heard Bethany's been trying to make contact. She's apparently struggling financially and emotionally." Marshall's expression hardened. "That's not our problem. She is the mother of your children." "No, Jeremiah. She's a woman who used to live in my house before she chose money over family. My children understand the distinction. What if she tries to come back? Then she'll discover that some choices are permanent." Marshall ended the call and returned to his work. Outside, a winter storm was building, but inside his home, everything was exactly as it should be. He'd learned the most important lesson of his life. Loyalty was the only virtue that mattered, and betrayal was the only sin that could never be forgiven. Jake appeared in the doorway. "Dad, Emma and I are making hot chocolate. Want some?" "Sure, son." As Marshall followed his son to the kitchen, he felt the deep satisfaction that came from absolute victory. His enemies were destroyed, his family was protected, and everyone who mattered understood the cost of crossing Marshall Thomas. In the end, that was all that mattered. Some people believed in redemption, second chances, and the power of forgiveness. Marshall Thomas believed in loyalty, consequence, and the absolute necessity of making your enemies regret ever being born. It was a philosophy that had served him well, and one he intended to pass on to his children. After all, family was everything, and everything else was just business.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.